Hello, you're listening to the OmniTalk Fast 5, brought to you in partnership with Microsoft, the A&M Consumer and Retail Group, Takeoff, Sezzle, and Silk. All right, let's move on to headline number 3. According to the Wall Street Journal, Procter & Gamble is, quote, rolling out star-studded ad campaigns and new product features from drip-proof soap bottles to extra-absorbent paper towels, hoping to keep cash-crunch consumers from switching to cheaper brands, end quote. According to Nielsen data, P&G has been underperforming in recent months amid inflation as consumers are going down in price. In one example, commercial wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin and Ice-T demonstrate how Tide can be used in cold water, which is cheaper than doing laundry in warm water. Chad, I was really excited to have this one on. You being a former CPG CMO, and Patricia, I want to hear your thoughts too, as we think about like the broader implications of, what trading down for CPG companies looks like. But Chad, let's start with you first. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think this is a interesting intersection of what P&G is trying to do here based on, obviously the macroeconomic standpoint, people trying to, save money, recessionary times, high inflation, price gaps widening naturally between branded products and sort of, insurgent private label or cheaper brands. But what I'm also seeing is that a lot of CPGs are doing this to themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So I know a number of companies that have been on a relentless pursuit of passing through price increases, 3 to 4 meaningful price increases over the last kind of 12 to 18 months. And they've been able to grow top line as a result of that and pass through costs. But what happens when your brand's price point exceeds the overall value proposition promised to consumers?
Right.
So once you violate that, either in absolute terms, so as a consumer, I'm not willing to pay that much for it, or relative to competition, I'm not willing to pay that much more for it. Mm-hmm. Substitution happens, much more rapidly. So P&G is saying, hey, we haven't lost share right now, but the pricing increases are propping up the revenue. So, the dam's about to break. So I applaud the effort, I suppose, in what they're trying to do to defend their turf. I picture Tide as like, you ever play as a kid, like King of the Hill, right? Mm-hmm. And like Tide's up there, and it was pretty easy when like 1 or 2 people climb up the hill to push them back down. But when the swarm of kids keeps running up, like you lose your footing. And that's what all like these pesky little private label and cheaper brands are starting to do to them. So, okay, yeah, they have to act.
Oh, I was just going to say, what's your thought as a marketer though, of like investing in like Vanilla Ice and Ice-T?
So that's what I was going to say, right?
Yeah.
So do this from an ad campaign. Like, does that work? I mean, I guess if you have something to say, but it's not really all that compelling to, kind of be like, hey, buy us because, like some of the examples that they gave, they're actually trying to change consumer behavior as opposed to any like inherent clear benefits of the product. Right. And it's sort of like, hey, now wash your stuff in cold water because that saves you money, as opposed to, like actually passing value in your product or doing it with innovation. I mean, ideally, new features, benefits, differentiated from the cheaper brands, but also desirable benefits, right? Uniqueness is only good if people care about it and are willing to pay for it. So things like extra absorbent paper towels, sure. Cardboard versus plastic packaging. I mean, I guess it depends on if you believe consumers are backing up their sustainability desires with their wallets. I'm not so sure yet. So, it seems like a lot of kind of fancy throwing money at the problem, maybe not in the right way to actually solve for it.
Well, Chad, one thing I wanted to ask you, and you kind of mentioned it in the first story, but I'm curious what this means for CPG going forward, because once pricing, everything's going up because of inflation. Once the market corrects, like now you have CPGs, are they going to be bringing the price back down once inflation goes away? That starts to settle a little bit. And what are they going to do with all that extra margin too? Like, how does that play into this?
Yeah. I mean, so historically not, right? You know, you don't
Mhm.
typically see CPGs back off
Right.
price increases for obvious reasons, right? You
Right.
chase it up and then you hold it, you know, as things come down, right? But I think it's really important, and you know, you kind of teed me up again, right? So as we think about kind of these revenue and margin management programs, thinking about those levers that I was describing in terms of pricing and then offsetting promotion, right? How you think about trade, how you think
Mhm.
about overall price pack architecture, that you can play with the value combination, a value equation to consumers in different ways by using multiple levers. And it's not just a price game, right? It's not
Yeah.
just about pricing through, list price increases. It's about how you work those in tandem, again, in order to make sure that, yes, your economic equation holds up,
Mhm.
that it works for the retailer from an
Yeah.
economic standpoint, that it's still worthy of the shelf space that you're holding, right? And you're increasing all of their important metrics like GMROI and et cetera, et cetera. But then it also works for the consumer value proposition. And there's ways to do that beyond just the pure price alone. And, you know, I think that's the onus on CPGs today, is to look at a more sophisticated kind of revenue and margin management program, as opposed to just pulling on a single lever time and time again.
Right. Yeah. Patricia, what would you throw in here?
I mean, I would throw in, I agree with Chad when it comes to the advertising piece.
Mhm.
I don't like the idea from a consumer standpoint that you're spending dollars in this economic environment in like big names to do big advertising campaigns. What I do like, and I think that they could take this further, but in a less flashy way, is the whole education angle of how can you do more with less, right? How can you use these products for longer? How can it save it in the long run? I think that piece is maybe something that they were trying to do, but it's getting lost even in the headlines. I also think that some of the innovation that's coming out and that they're talking about, it's not innovation that was done to save money, right? Because these innovations, they have been in the pipeline prior to the inflationary, environment. So I think, again, right, you should talk about how those innovations can save you money in the long run, but I think it would be less obnoxious if you did it in a more kind of, you're doing it grassroots, not big advertising. I think it would bother the consumer less. It might have a negative effect.
Right. Chris, what would you throw in here?
I mean, I don't have much to add. I think these guys covered it pretty well. I mean, I actually love Chad's analogy of the king of the hill. The only thing I would add to it is like the other part of this is that the ground underneath you at top that hill is breaking fundamentally because of the macroeconomic conditions. It's lowering it for everyone. So now it's like a free for all in this space, and the cream's going to rise to the top on this. And, P&G's sat on that perch for a long time. So it's part of me that's kind of good to see you guys having to work a little bit harder to be successful here going forward too.